Hi, everyone, I'm Dan Abrams, and this is Court Case.
Ready to take the play?
I hope you die in person as well. The defendant was driving on Highway 80 and came up and started tailgating two individuals using one vehicle.
First up, we're in Roseville, California, for the arraignment of Deirdre Orozco. The 50-year-old was charged with multiple crimes, including reckless driving, assault with a deadly weapon, and resisting arrest, following a dangerous road rage incident captured on cell phone video.
Go past her. I'm not pulling over. Dude!
Orozco's driving the silver truck. And just moments earlier, the passenger of this car flipped her the bird after she allegedly cut off her friend who's behind the wheel.
Oh my god! Go. This is the craziest I've never seen anything like this. I hope all these cars are calling the cops. Like, I have to drive fast to, like, get in front of her. I know. Like, I almost want to stop and pull over and exit. No, because I showed Gat out of the car. Dude, I don't know what to do!
As Orozco swerves and tries to pin in their vehicle,
I'm not... Just drive. Just keep driving. Dude. I know, just keep driving as well as you can. You're fine, I promise.
the passenger puts in a call to 911.
Hi, we have a really bad emergency on Highway 80, and we're right now passing Dutch Flats Road. We have a vehicle that has been following us, and it's swerving in front of us. Yes, we're in the white Mazda. Yes, ma'am. And she's swerving us off the road. She keeps trying to hit us off the road. I'm freaking out. Dude, she's doing really bad. She just hit our car. She's pushing us off of the road. Yeah, she's pushing us off the road. She's coming for us.
After ramming their car, Orozco blocks them in.
Put it in reverse, Vanessa. Put it in reverse.
Then jumps out of her car and heads right for them.
No. They're telling us to exit. I can't. She's speeding in front of me, dude. We don't know what to do. Go. The CHP office is off of Dutch Flat. She's saying go straight to the CHP office. Dude, she's so
But racing toward the next exit, they see Orozco.
And then, okay, she's gonna hit us. There's an officer parked right here in the vehicle. Can you help us, please? Can he help us? Please. Go to the officer. Go to the officer. Okay. Please. Make sure he helps us, please. Help us. Please. Can we get away from her and talk to her? Sorry, I'm scared.
When confronted by police, Orozco claimed she was just trying to make a citizen's arrest of the other driver, who she said was texting and driving erratically. Ultimately, after resisting officers, Orozco was arrested and taken into custody. Now, 3 days later at her arraignment, Orozco's bizarre behavior continues. As she signs, "I love you," then flashes a big smile for the camera.
The defendant was driving on Highway 80.
Then, as details of the incident are read, she appears to act out the very actions that landed her in court.
And came up and started tailgating two individuals with one vehicle.
When given a chance to speak, Orozco does have two requests. One, she wants things handled quickly.
Whatever's the most expeditious way, that's what I want to do.
And two, rather than the state's proposed $500,000 bond, she throws out an unsolicited counteroffer.
Let's put it at 100.
Deirdre Orozco was held on the $500,000 bond, later pled no contest to assault with a deadly weapon and an amended charge of making threats to commit a crime resulting in death. She was sentenced to 925 days in county jail, with credit for time served, 5 years probation. Next, we go to a juvenile hearing in Clinton County, Ohio. The defendant, Chance Macko, who's 17, was charged with grand theft auto and robbery. A year earlier, Macko, along with 2 other teens, allegedly escaped from a halfway house where he was being held on a misdemeanor theft charge, stole a truck, then took police on a high-speed chase. The chase ended when Macko crashed the vehicle into an apartment building. The teen was reportedly under the influence at the time of the incident, but thankfully no one was injured. Today, the shackled defendant sits before Magistrate Mark Myers. That's Jim Buckner, the court bailiff, who puts his hand on the defendant just before he approaches the bench. Macko doesn't seem to appreciate it and reportedly says to Buckner, "You don't put your hands on me." That's when he grabs the defendant and puts him in a headlock. Buckner then pulls Macko further back on the chair, not letting go of his neck. Eventually, the defendant hits the floor. But it's not over. Buckner drags the teen across the floor, straight out the door. But this isn't where the story ends. A deputy who was in the courtroom reported the incident to the sheriff's office, who later sent the video to the state's attorney general. In exchange for no criminal charges, Buckner resigned and surrendered his peace training certification, which means he can no longer work as an Ohio peace officer. As for Macko, he pled guilty to 2 counts of grand theft auto and 1 count of robbery. He was sentenced to a total of 72 months in prison. Next, we're in Leesburg, Virginia, for a domestic violence trial. 26-year-old James Phillips was charged with assault and battery against a family or household member for allegedly punching his girlfriend in the face during an argument. With 2 previous domestic violence convictions already, Phillips' charge is enhanced to a felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. The prosecution's first witness is the alleged victim, 33-year-old Katie Orndorff.
How long have you been in a relationship with Mr. Phillips?
Roughly maybe like 3 months, 6 months, something along this time.
And can you describe for the jury and for the court what sort of relationship you were in with Mr. Phillips?
Romantic, or, boyfriend, girlfriend.
Seeming a bit nervous on the stand, Katie describes how 2 months earlier, she and Phillips got into an argument in her car as she was driving him home from dinner.
What does an argument mean for you?
Verbally, yelling and screaming.
And what do you remember happening at that point?
So I know he hit me twice in the face, and I know I got a bruise from one. The second one, there was blood coming from my nose.
Now, during cross-examination, Phillips' lawyer attempts to poke holes in some of Orndorff's previous testimony.
Ms. Orndorff, you said that you did not actually have your phone, that Mr. Phillips was in possession of it, correct? It was actually, I guess I misworded it. It was on the little hook, the holder.
And saying you did know where your phone was.
I did not say that I didn't know where my phone was. If I did, I meant that he wasn't allowing me to call 911, whether or not.
Once again, if you could just focus on the questions for me.
Could you repeat the questions, please?
Your testimony previously was that Mr. Phillips had your cell phone, correct?
Bottom line is in the day he punched me in the face twice. And I just
Ms. Orndorff, I would just ask you to focus on the questions at hand.
After more back and forth,
I don't understand what
You were telling Mr. Phillips that he was going to learn his lesson.
the bruise on my face,
Phillips' attorney asked the judge for a sidebar.
Ms. Orndorff, please, I'm going to object to the matter. Your Honor, I think that at this time we should call a sidebar in the matter.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our afternoon recess.
With the jury out of the room, Judge James Fisher keeps the alleged victim on the hot seat.
Ms. Orndorff, I've been looking at your demeanor and how you testified today. You appear to me to be under the influence of narcotics or some other type of substance. Have you taken medicine so
come off.
Excuse me, listen to my question. Have you taken any medicines or narcotics or anything else that would influence you today?
I recently came off all of my medication, antidepressant, and stabilizer, and it's affecting me.
In what way?
I feel very, stressed and anxiety with this whole situation because, regardless of being revengeful and spiteful, it happened. These things.
That's not the question. This is kind of an example of not being responsive to my question. I want to know what you've taken prior to today. Prior to coming in here today, it's affected your demeanor.
Honestly, I smoke marijuana.
Recreational marijuana is legal in Virginia, but that doesn't seem to matter to Judge Fisher.
You smoked marijuana today?
Huh?
Listen to my question. You smoked marijuana prior to your testimony today?
Before I even got in the car and came here.
Not the answer the judge was looking for.
We'll find you in contempt of court.
Me?
I'm going to sentence you to 10 days in the county jail and the remainder of custody.
Me? What?
We're going to take a recess, and we're going to hear a legal argument.
Oh my God! I didn't even do anything. What am I supposed to do? I don't understand.
Moments after the video ends, Katie Orndorff was placed in handcuffs, filing a motion to vacate her contempt charge. Judge James Fisher refused to hear the motion, but ultimately came under fire himself, for in effect silencing an alleged victim of domestic violence. Witnesses in court, including the prosecutor and sheriff's deputies, claimed Orndorff did not seem impaired, but was just nervous, testifying a few feet away from her alleged abuser. Despite calls for impeachment from protesters in the community, Judge Fisher remains on the bench. The case against James Phillips was ruled a mistrial. The second trial is now pending.
There are no number of apologies or prayers that will ever convince me that the guy who did this is innocent.
Next, we go to Tampa, Florida for a competency hearing. The defendant, Mykese Morse, has been charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder. 2 months earlier, Morse allegedly drove his vehicle off the road and intentionally struck 42-year-old Pedro Aguiberry, who was out cycling with his 2 young sons. The husband and father died from the collision. The 2 boys survived with minor injuries. Morse ditched his vehicle, but was arrested hours later at his parents' house. His parents claimed their son had been struggling with mental illness for years. Morse pled not guilty, but before the case can move forward, Judge Mark Kaiser orders a psychological evaluation to determine if Morse is competent to stand trial. Morse is present at the hearing and uses the opportunity to make a surprise statement to the judge.
On June 12th, before I even got in the situation out here, I was to be seen between 12:30 and 4:30 on Orient Road in Hillsborough.
Mr. Morse,
I committed a murder.
Morse appears to be trying to confess to a murder, but there's one major problem. It's not the murder of Pedro Aguiberry, for which he's charged.
I committed a murder.
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you right now.
You can stop it in the Hard Rock Casino.
You need to stop
and they're talking right now. Okay, I'm sorry. I need to say this.
The judge does his best to silence him, but the defendant continues.
You're not going to be able to stay in the court. I think we're going to talk over each other.
I needed to get this off my chest, Your Honor.
Mr. Morse, you need to stop talking.
Finally, the judge decides there's only one way to stop Morse from speaking.
Mr. Morse, I'm going to have you taken out of the court since you're not able to stop talking.
I'm not saying anything, but...
All right, we're going to have you just removed, and we'll call you back in just a minute.
Once Morse is removed, police follow up on the details of this new murder confession, but find nothing. Morse was eventually deemed competent to stand trial, and 2.5 years later, he would change his plea to not guilty by reason of insanity. Psychiatrists for both the state and defense evaluate Morse and view some of his social media postings from the time of the incident.
Yeah, devil, it's all your fault. Yeah, devil, this is all your fault. All your fault because you did the earth.
Doctors judges from both sides agree Morse was legally insane at the time of the incident.
He did not know or appreciate the nature of his actions and its consequences, nor did he appreciate the wrongfulness of his behavior.
The medical ruling provides little solace to Pedro's heartbroken widow, who makes an emotional statement to the court.
There are no number of apologies or prayers that will ever convince me that the guy who did this is innocent. More than just a life was taken from us that day.
Next, it's the defendant who speaks remotely to the victim's wife.
I really regret not getting the help that I needed beforehand, before this accident. I'm sincerely sorry that I'm causing you this pain.
And with that, Judge Kaiser announces his ruling.
At this point, the court has entered the finding of not guilty by reason of insanity.
Mike Morse avoids a prison sentence, but he's currently in a mental health facility where he continues to receive treatment. He will not leave that facility until and unless it's determined he's no longer suffering from mental illness and would not be a threat to the community.
How do you wish to plead to murder in the second degree? Guilty? Yes, sir.
We're in Saginaw, Michigan, where 51-year-old Stephen Sanderson just pled guilty to the murder of another inmate inside a state correctional facility. 10 months earlier, Sanderson, who was already serving life without parole for the 1991 murder of his girlfriend, attacked and strangled his 67-year-old cellmate. He says he did it for a very specific reason.
The reason I killed him was because he was a child molester.
His cellmate, Theodore Dyer, was convicted of first-degree criminal sexual conduct in 2014 for molesting a 9-year-old girl who lived next door to him.
He was my bunkie, and I had found out that he was in prison for child molestation. Really bad case. So that night he was trying to justify why he did it, and I just told him to be quiet, and he would have to leave in the morning to find a new cell. But he continued to talk about it and try to justify it, so he was a little bit bigger than me, so I got down and I hit him in his face a few times, and when he fell, I wrapped a cord around his neck and I took his life.
But you didn't in fact kill him?
Oh, sure.
And you intended to kill him?
Oh, sure, yes.
2 weeks later at sentencing, Sanderson's matter-of-fact demeanor continues as he addresses the public response he received following the murder.
Since this all happened, it's kind of been, people think I'm some kind of hero. Well, I'm actually not. I just, did what I thought was best in the time that I was given. I don't feel bad for what I did, I feel bad for maybe the families, his family or something. But as far as remorse towards him, no.
Sanderson then claims Theodore Dyer's real judgment is still to come.
I'm getting these emails saying that, it's not my position to judge anybody. And I want to make it quite clear that I didn't judge him. I know God is the only judge we have. I just set the appointment up.
Without comment, the judge then issued Stephen Sanderson the maximum penalty of an additional life sentence to be added to his previous sentence of life without parole. That's it for this edition of Court Cam. I'm Dan Abrams. Thanks for watching.